Welcome back. In today's video, I just want to go over the basics of hearing loss. I realize that a lot of you have already had your hearing tested before, so I'm just going to go very basically over the different types of hearing loss. There are three different types of hearing loss, which is sensorineural, a conductive hearing loss, and then a mixed type of hearing loss. Sensorineural hearing losses are responsible for over 90% of all hearing losses, and that's what occurs when there is damage to the hair cells inside the cochlea in the inner ear. And at that point, the only treatment option available for you is amplification through hearing aids. The second type of hearing loss is what we call a conductive hearing loss. This is responsible for less than 10% of all hearing losses, and this is occurs in the middle ear, behind the eardrum, but between the eardrum and the cochlea in the inner ear. And this is, like I said, is responsible for less than 10% of all hearing losses. But when you have a conductive hearing loss, you must seek medical attention. A lot of times they can give you some type of medication or some type of procedure can address that for you. The last kind of hearing loss is what we call a mixed loss. Mixed hearing loss it's a combination. There is an issue in the inner ear and there's something going on in the middle ear. So you do need medical attention where you have to go to a doctor to address the conductive hearing loss. But even once that is fixed, you still have an underlying sensorineural hearing loss. In most of the cases, you will still require amplification. When you look at your whole auditory system, that includes your ear, the auditory nerve that goes from your ear to the brain, and then the acoustic imaging center within the brain. All three parts makes up your auditory system. When you have a hearing loss that occurs in the ear, if that remains unaddressed for a certain amount of time, and it varies from person to person, but eventually what happens is you begin to lose the ability to process it, the sounds that you do hear. And so if you've ever known anybody who they would say, they have a hearing loss, and you would turn up the volume, but they'd say, I can't hear you. Even though you know they're hearing you, but they just still can't understand what you're saying. That's a condition called an auditory processing deficiency. Another thing that can happen is a lot of times what you will see with people, the complaint that you'll see is people will say, listen, I can hear you, I just can't understand what you're saying. Typically, that's what we call a high-frequency hearing loss, which is a sensorineural hearing loss. That's a condition that's happening in the nerves inside the inner ear, and hearing aids do a great job of addressing that problem. But you can have that same symptom, meaning I can hear you, but I just can't understand you, or I can hear you, but when we're in a crowd, I hear all the noise, I hear you, but I just can't process what people are saying, or I can't pick out what you're saying. That can be a condition, an auditory processing deficiency that is occurring within the brain. And that's fairly common. It happens to about 20% of all people have that to one degree or another. And so for those individuals, there's really not a lot you can do. You just have to pay real close attention when you're talking to someone in those noisy environments.